Hey, my name is Nolan Mercer. I'm 29 years old and I work at a big distribution warehouse on the edge of town. 12-hour shifts of moving boxes, scanning orders, pushing pallets, and unloading trucks. By the time I get home, my shoulders feel like someone replaced them with concrete. I live alone in a small rental house at the end of a quiet street. Nothing fancy, just a place to sleep and shower before doing it all again. The house next door belongs to Emma Reed. She's 30, works in marketing at some mid-sized firm downtown. We've been neighbors for almost 3 years now. At first, she was just the woman who lived beside me. We waved over the fence, took in each other's packages when it rained, dragged each other's trash bins to the curb on windy days. Small things. The kind that become habits without anyone noticing. Over time, those habits turned into something steadier. I fixed the loose hinge on her back gate. She brought over banana bread or cookies when she baked too much. I changed the burned-out bulb on her porch light. She left a bag of coffee beans on my doorstep because she knew I left for work before sunrise. Once her orange cat Milo climbed onto my roof and refused to come down. I had to get the ladder while Emma stood below, worried out of her mind, calling his name like he was a child who'd run into traffic. Emma used to be the kind of person who could make the whole street feel less quiet. She worked long hours but still found time to stand at the fence and tell me about a difficult client or a plant she'd accidentally killed. Some evenings I'd come home and find a note taped to my door. "Your package is at my place. Don't leave it on the porch, it's going to rain." We were close in that easy, neighborly way that never crossed into anything else. Not dating, not quite friends either. Just two people who happened to live next to each other and didn't mind the company. Then about 6 months ago, everything changed. She started getting quieter. The conversations over the fence got shorter. Her light stayed on later and later. A few times I got up in the middle of the night for water and saw her silhouette behind the curtains, still at her laptop at 1 in the morning. The next day, she'd still leave for work at 7:30, coffee in hand, dark circles under her eyes telling me she was fine. I didn't push. I figured whatever had happened during those 2 weeks she disappeared for family business was hers to keep. But I noticed. I noticed the way her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. I noticed the way she moved like someone carrying something heavy she didn't want anyone else to see. One evening I came home late and found her struggling to drag a heavy box from her car trunk into the house. I crossed the lawn and carried it inside for her. The box was full of files, old notebooks, and a few picture frames turned face down. Her living room looked messier than usual. Laptop open on the coffee table, cold coffee cup, sticky notes everywhere. She stood beside me looking embarrassed. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I've been a little overwhelmed lately." I set the box down near her desk. "No problem. If you need help moving anything else, just say the word." The next morning there was a small box of cookies on my doorstep with a note. "Thanks for yesterday." I ate every single one after my shift, even though they were a little dry. When I saw her that evening, I told her they were good. She gave me a small smile, but it was tired. Something in it had dimmed. After that night, I started paying closer attention. Not out of curiosity, out of a quiet kind of worry. The kind that sits in your chest and tells you, if you look away for too long, something important might slip through the cracks right beside you. The first real sign came on a cold night in late fall. I had just fallen asleep after a brutal shift when a sound outside woke me. At first I thought it was the wind. Then I heard the back gate between our houses creak open, followed by the soft sound of bare feet on the brick path. I sat up and looked through the window. Emma was standing in the middle of the yard in a loose nightgown, hair messy, feet bare on the cold ground. Her eyes were open, but they looked empty. She wasn't awake. I moved slowly. I didn't call her name loudly. I stepped outside and approached her carefully, keeping my voice low. "Emma, you're outside. It's okay. I'm here." She didn't look at me. She was muttering something under her breath, words I couldn't quite catch. Then I heard two of them clearly. "Can't find Mom." My stomach dropped. She had never mentioned her mother to me before. I stayed in front of her, giving her space. She took a step forward and bumped lightly into my chest. Both of her hands came up and grabbed the front of my shirt, fingers twisting into the fabric like she was holding on to the only real thing in a dream. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Don't leave me alone. I'm so tired." I stood there frozen. Every instinct told me I should wake her up, get her back inside her own house before this turned into something neither of us could explain. But she was shaking. Her whole body trembled like if I stepped away, she might shatter right there in her sleep. I didn't know what to do. So I did the only thing that felt right in the moment. I spoke softly, the way you'd talk to someone having a nightmare. "You're home, Emma. You're safe. I've got you." She didn't wake, but some of the tension left her shoulders. I gently turned her around and walked her back to her house. Her bedroom light was on. The bed was unmade, papers scattered across the desk, another cold coffee cup sitting there. I helped her sit down on the edge of the bed and pulled the blanket up over her. When I tried to leave, her hand caught my wrist. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, still asleep. "Everyone thinks I can handle everything. But I'm so tired." The words hit me harder than I expected. I had known her for 3 years. I had fixed her gate, changed her light bulbs, rescued her cat, and somehow I had missed how much weight she was carrying. I stood there in her bedroom, looking at a woman I thought I knew, and realized I didn't know nearly enough. I tucked the blanket higher and spoke as gently as I could. "You don't have to do anything right now, just sleep." She let go of my wrist. I waited until her breathing evened out, then I left, locking her door behind me. Back in my own house, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the sound of her voice saying she couldn't find her mother. Kept thinking about those 2 weeks she vanished. About the late nights and the tired smiles and the way she kept insisting she was fine when she clearly wasn't. I had been right there the whole time, right next door, and I had let her carry it alone. That thought sat heavy in my chest until the sky started to turn gray outside my window. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I didn't know how deep this went or what she had been through. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to look away again. I didn't sleep much after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice in the dark, small and broken, saying she couldn't do it anymore. By the time the sun came up, I was already on my second cup of coffee, staring out the kitchen window at her house like it might give me answers. Around 8:30, I heard her front door open. I stepped onto my porch to grab the newspaper, and there she was, standing on her front steps with a mug in her hands. She looked like she hadn't slept either. When she saw me, her whole body went still. The expression on her face wasn't the usual tired smile. It was something closer to fear. "Nolan," she said carefully, like she was testing the ground before taking a step. "Did I do something weird last night?" I didn't want to embarrass her, but I also didn't want to lie. I kept my voice calm. "You went outside, sleepwalking." Her face lost color. She set the mug down on the porch railing like her hands weren't steady enough to hold it. "Outside? How far?" "Not far. You were standing in the yard between our houses. I brought you back inside." She pressed both hands to her face for a second, then dropped them. Her voice came out tight. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to bother you. I don't even remember any of it." "You didn't bother me," I said. "You were asleep. But I'm an adult. I can't just wander around in the middle of the night and expect my neighbor to babysit me." The word babysit made something in my chest tighten. I hated how ashamed she sounded. "Emma, you didn't choose this, but you need to know it's happening." She went quiet for a long time. Then she asked, barely above a whisper, "Did I say anything?" I hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. She gripped the railing like she needed something solid to hold on to. "I always say things when I sleepwalk," she said. "Weird things. Things I don't want anyone to hear." I answered gently. "You said you were tired, that everyone thinks you can handle everything, but you can't anymore." She didn't move. The look on her face wasn't just embarrassment anymore. It was the look of someone who had just been seen exactly where they'd been trying hardest to hide. She turned her head away, voice low. "I didn't mean to say that out loud." "I know," I said, "but that doesn't make it any less true." She looked back at me then. Her eyes were a little red. For a moment, I thought she might cry right there on her porch, but she swallowed it down. "You don't know what I've been through." "No," I admitted. "I don't. But I know what it looks like when someone's been holding it together for too long." That stopped her from arguing. She told me she used to sleepwalk sometimes as a kid, but it had been years. After everything that happened with her family a few months ago, it came back worse than before. She didn't give me details, and I didn't ask. I just offered to come over that evening and add a higher latch on her back door, plus a small bell that would ring if the door opened. At least then, if she tried to go outside again, there'd be some kind of warning. She didn't say yes right away. She just looked at me for a long second, like she was trying to decide whether to let someone see how bad things really were. Okay, she said finally, if it's not too much trouble. That night I showed up at her door with my toolbox. She held the flashlight while I worked, quiet in a way that felt heavier than usual. I installed the new latch high enough that she'd have to reach for it even half asleep, and I hung a small bell on the handle. When I tested it, the sound was soft but clear. Before I left, she stared at the bell and asked, "What if it rings in the middle of the night? Then I'll know you need help." She looked at me for a long time, then she said, almost too quiet to hear, "You don't have to do this." "I know." Her voice dropped even lower. "But thank you." The days after that felt different. Not dramatic, just closer. She started texting me when she knew she'd be working late. I left a container of leftover chili on her doorstep when I noticed her light still on past midnight. She responded in her own way. A fresh cup of coffee waiting on my porch on mornings I had early shifts. My trash bin pulled up close to the house before a storm. Short messages that said more than they seemed to. "I'm home, doors locked." We never talked about what any of it meant. We just kept showing up for each other in these small, quiet ways. The sleepwalking didn't stop. Some nights the bell rang, and I'd cross the yard to find her standing in her living room, eyes open but empty, whispering about deadlines and meetings and reports that weren't finished. I'd say the same thing every time. "Emma, you're home, you're safe." She'd let me guide her back to bed like it was the most natural thing in the world. Other nights she cried in her sleep and called for her mother. Once I found her standing at her desk with her hand resting on the closed laptop, murmuring that she couldn't be late. Every time it happened, I understood a little more. This wasn't just insomnia, something inside her was still running, even when her body was asleep. Then one night, everything shifted again. I had taken the trash out and forgotten to lock the back door. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up to the feeling of the mattress dipping beside me. I opened my eyes and saw Emma lying down next to me, still asleep, her hair messy on the pillow, one hand clutching the front of my shirt like she was afraid it would disappear. Her voice came out small and cracked. "Don't go." I stayed completely still. Every rational part of my brain said I should wake her up, take her home, put some distance back between us before this got even more complicated. But she was shaking again, and the exhaustion on her face looked so deep I couldn't bring myself to startle her. I kept my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not going anywhere." She settled a little. Then she spoke again, and the words came out like they'd been waiting a long time to be said. "I'm so tired. I don't want to be the strong one anymore." I pulled the blanket up over her shoulder, careful to keep space between us. I didn't sleep. I just lay there listening to her breathing slowly even out, wondering what had happened to her family and how a woman who used to laugh so easily had ended up only able to tell the truth when she was unconscious. Around 3, she woke up. At first, she just stared at the ceiling, confused. Then she realized where she was and sat up fast, face pale. "Nolan, where am I? Is this your room?" I sat up slowly, keeping my voice steady. "Yeah, you came over while you were sleeping. You're okay." She looked down at the blanket, then at her hand still gripping my shirt. She let go like it burned her. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't even know how I got in here. I don't remember anything." "It's fine," I said. "You didn't do anything wrong." "No, it's not fine. I walked into your house, I got into your bed, I woke you up. I keep doing this and you keep acting like it's okay." I looked at her and spoke clearly. "I'm not acting." She went quiet. Tears filled her eyes but didn't fall yet. "Did I say anything?" she asked. I didn't lie. "Yeah." She closed her eyes like she was bracing for impact. "What did I say?" I took a breath. "You told me not to go, and you said you were tired, that you didn't want to be the strong one anymore." She covered her face with both hands. After a long moment, she spoke through her fingers, voice shaking. "I hate this version of myself." I got out of bed but stayed a few feet away. I don't hate you for this. I just think you've been carrying it alone for too long. She didn't answer right away. I went to the kitchen and came back with a glass of water. She took it with both hands, still trembling. We sat in silence for a while, the only sound the faint hum of the refrigerator. Eventually she spoke. I should go back to the doctor. I nodded. Yeah. She looked up at me, eyes red. Would you go with me? I answered without hesitation. Of course. She stared at me like she wasn't sure she'd heard right. Really? Really? She looked down at the glass. I don't know how to do any of this by myself anymore. I sat on the edge of the bed, not too close, not too far. Then don't. That night, Emma cried in front of me for the first time while she was fully awake. No hiding it. No forcing a tired smile afterward. She cried like someone who had been standing for years and finally ran out of strength. I didn't rush to hold her. I sat on the floor a little distance away and waited until she decided. After a while, she set the glass down and looked at me with wet eyes. Nolan, she said quietly, I need someone to hold me right now, not fix me, just hold me. I stood up and pulled her into my arms. She cried against my shoulder, telling me she didn't want to keep living like this. I just kept saying the same thing over and over. We'll figure it out. You're not doing it alone. When I finally walked her back to her house, she stood on her porch for a long time before asking if I was scared of her. I told her I wasn't scared of her. I was only scared that one day she'd convince herself she had to carry everything by herself again. She didn't say anything else. But when she went inside, she left the porch light on a little longer than usual, like a quiet thank you. Something between us had changed that night. We still hadn't named it. But we both knew the old version of our relationship was gone. 2 days later, I drove Emma to see Dr. Helen Hayes. The doctor's office was in a quiet medical building downtown. Dr. Hayes was in her 50s, calm, direct, and not the type to hand out easy answers. She listened to Emma describe the sleepwalking, the exhaustion, the late nights, and then she asked about family. That was when Emma finally told the full story. Her mother had been sick for almost a year. Emma had been the one who took time off work, stayed at the hospital, handled the doctors, the paperwork, the decisions. After the funeral, she went straight back to her job like nothing had happened. She thought if she just kept moving, the grief wouldn't catch up. But it had. The sleepwalking got worse. The anxiety got louder. She kept telling everyone she was fine because that's what everyone expected from her. Dr. Hayes nodded slowly. Your body is trying to say the things you've been silencing during the day, she said. Long-term stress, unresolved grief, and chronic sleep deprivation are feeding each other. We need to treat all three. She scheduled a sleep study, recommended therapy, and suggested Emma cut back on work for a while. Most importantly, she told Emma she couldn't keep pretending everything was under control. Emma sat very still through most of the appointment. At one point, her hands started shaking on her lap. I rested my hand on the armrest between us, close but not touching. After a moment, she reached over and placed her hand on top of mine. She didn't look at me, but her fingers tightened. When Dr. Hayes asked how we knew each other, Emma answered before I could. He's the reason I don't feel crazy. I turned to look at her. She kept her eyes on the doctor, but her grip on my hand didn't loosen. On the drive home, she was quiet for a long time. Then she asked what I would have said if the doctor had asked me the same question. I told her the truth. I don't know what label to put on it. I just know I care about you. When your lights are still on at 1 a.m, I worry. When you go a few days without texting, I find myself looking at your windows more than I should. And when you sleepwalk, the first thing I think isn't that it's inconvenient. I just want you safe. She stared out the window for a while. Sounds a lot like a boyfriend, she said softly. I kept my eyes on the road. Maybe, but I don't want you to feel like you have to give something back just because I'm helping. She was quiet again. Then she said, I didn't hold your hand in that office because I was grateful. I didn't know how to answer that, so I didn't. The words stayed with me for days. Emma started treatment. Therapy twice a week, a low dose of medication to help regulate her sleep, and strict orders to reduce her workload. She listened to all of it. She even took a week off. But old habits die hard. She still checked her email too much. She still stayed up later than she should. And some nights the bell on her back door still rang. I kept coming over when it did. I kept saying the same words. Emma, you're home. You're safe. She always let me bring her back to bed. Sometimes she cried in her sleep. Sometimes she just stood there, lost. Every time it happened, I felt the distance between us shrinking, even though neither of us had named what was growing. Then came the night of the storm. It was almost 1 in the morning when thunder shook the whole house and woke me. Rain was hammering the roof so hard it sounded like someone was throwing gravel at the windows. I sat up and looked toward Emma's house out of habit. Her living room light was still on, but the curtains were moving strangely. Something felt wrong. I pulled on a jacket, grabbed a flashlight, and ran across the yard in the pouring rain. When I reached her back porch, my stomach dropped. The door was open. The little bell was swinging wildly in the wind, but the storm was too loud for me to have heard it from my house. Emma? No answer. I stepped inside. Milo was on the couch, fur standing up, yowling toward the open door. Emma's laptop was still on the coffee table. A mug had been knocked over, tea spilled across the floor. I checked her bedroom, the bathroom, the kitchen. Empty. I ran back outside and shined the flashlight on the ground. Through the mud, I could see bare footprints leading toward the street. I took off running. The rain was coming down so hard I could barely see. The streetlights were blurry halos in the dark. I called her name again and again, but the wind swallowed the sound. Then I saw her. She was walking right down the middle of the road in her nightgown, barefoot, hair plastered to her face. Her eyes were open but completely blank. She moved like she was in a dream, slow and steady, heading straight toward the intersection. Emma, stop! She didn't hear me. Headlights appeared at the end of the street, a car coming around the curve. The driver clearly hadn't seen her yet. Emma kept walking. I sprinted. Emma! The car horn blared. Tires screeched on wet pavement. I reached her at the last second, grabbed her from behind, and yanked her hard toward the curb. We both went down in the grass as the car swerved past, missing us by inches. Water sprayed everywhere. The driver slammed on the brakes and rolled down his window, shouting if we were okay. I raised one hand to signal we were fine, even though my whole body was shaking. Emma was in my arms, soaking wet and ice cold. She started to wake up. Her breathing came fast and panicked. She looked around at the rain, the road, the car, then at me, and her face crumpled. Nolan, where am I? What did I do? I held her tighter. You're okay. I've got you. You're safe. She started crying so hard her whole body shook. I'm scared. I don't remember anything. I don't know why I'm out here. I cupped her face with both hands, making her look at me. Look at me. You were in the road, but I pulled you out. The car didn't hit you. You're still here. I'm still here. She stared at me through the rain and tears like she was trying to make sure I was real. Then she buried her face in my chest and sobbed. I got her back to her house, wrapped her in towels, and called the after-hours line the doctor had given us. She cried in her bedroom for almost an hour while I sat in the living room, listening. When she finally came out, her eyes were swollen and her voice was hoarse. I can't keep living like this, she said. I stood up and walked over to her. Then we change it. But you're not doing it by yourself anymore. That night, something inside me clicked into place with painful clarity. When I saw those headlights coming toward her, the fear that hit me wasn't the fear of a neighbor losing someone. It was the fear of losing the person I loved. I didn't say it out loud. Not yet. But I knew. Emma didn't try to smile or pretend she was okay. She just looked at me and said the words I had been waiting months to hear. I don't want to do this alone anymore. I pulled her into my arms again, right there in the middle of her living room, with rain still dripping from both of us. You won't have to, I told her. Not ever again. The next morning, Emma called her boss and asked for time off. I sat at her kitchen table while she made the call, not interrupting, just being there. Her voice was still rough from crying. She told them she had a health issue that needed serious treatment, and she couldn't keep pushing through it. When she hung up, she set the phone down and stared at it for a long time. I always thought if I stopped, everything would fall apart, she said quietly. Maybe some things will change, I answered. But keeping going the way you were was the most dangerous thing. Dr. Hayes moved up Emma's sleep study appointment. Therapy started twice a week. She adjusted her medication, cut her workload in half, and was told she shouldn't sleep alone for the first few weeks. Emma hated the last part the most. She didn't want to feel like a burden, and she especially didn't want me rearranging my life around her. I told her clearly that I wasn't staying because I felt obligated. I was staying because I wanted her safe, and because I wanted to be near her. For the next couple of weeks, I slept on her couch. She slept in her bedroom with the door slightly open and a louder bell on the back door. Every night before bed, we checked the locks together. At first, she checked them 3 or 4 times. After a while, she checked less. One evening, she stood in the doorway of the living room, watching me spread a blanket on the couch, and asked, "Are you sure you're not tired of this?" "If I'm tired, I'll sleep," I said. "You don't need to apologize for trying to get better." She didn't answer, but her eyes got glassy. She had spent so long apologizing for needing anything at all. Now she was having to relearn that asking for help wasn't failure. Slowly, she started telling me more. She told me about the last months of her mother's life, about how everyone in the family had looked at her like she was the strong one, the one who could handle it. So they kept giving her more to carry. She told me there were days she had been so exhausted she almost wished it would all just end, and then hated herself for thinking it. I didn't interrupt. I didn't tell her she shouldn't have felt that way. I just sat beside her and let her say it all. One night after a therapy session, she came over to my house. She didn't bring cookies or coffee like she used to. She just stood on my porch looking tired and asked if I was busy. I let her in. She sat on the couch for a long time before she spoke. Today, the therapist asked me what I'm most afraid people will see if I'm not strong all the time. I sat across from her. "What did you say?" She looked down at her hands. "I said I'm afraid they'll see that I'm empty." I was quiet for a moment, then I said, "I don't see you as empty. I see you as tired. Those are two different things." She looked up at me. After a while, she leaned her head against my shoulder. This time, she was fully awake. No sleepwalking, no panic. She chose to stay close. "Next to you," she said softly. "I don't have to perform anymore." "I'm glad," I answered. She was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, "Are you scared it might take me a long time to get better?" "I'm not waiting for a perfect version of you," I said. "I just don't want you to disappear from yourself again." That made her cry, but this time she didn't try to hide it. I let her cry against my shoulder. When she finally lifted her head, her face was close to mine. I could see the fear in her eyes, but I could also see something else. She wanted to believe she could be loved even while she was still healing. "If you want to kiss me," she said, "you can ask." I looked at her and asked the question out loud. "Can I kiss you?" She nodded. "Yes?" I kissed her. It wasn't a kiss that tried to fix everything. It wasn't dramatic or perfect. It was just real. Two people who had seen each other at their most exhausted and still chose to stay. When we pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Me too," I said. "So what do we do?" "We go slow," she nodded. And that's exactly what we did. After that night, the line between us was gone. We didn't rush to label anything. We didn't make big declarations, but everything felt different. She stopped trying so hard to seem okay all the time. She let herself be tired in front of me. She let herself need things. And I stopped pretending I was only there to help a neighbor. I was there because I wanted to be. One afternoon, she texted me from work asking if I could bring her lunch because she had back-to-back meetings and forgot to eat. I showed up with a sandwich and coffee. She looked surprised when I walked into her office. Then she smiled. A real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in months. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know," I answered. "I wanted to." She looked at me for a long second, then reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. "Thank you for not giving up on me when I was at my worst." I squeezed back. "I never saw you at your worst. I just saw you when you finally stopped pretending." That evening, she came over again. We didn't talk about the kiss or what it meant. We just sat on the couch, her head on my shoulder, watching some old movie neither of us was really paying attention to. At one point, she fell asleep for real. Not sleepwalking, just regular, peaceful sleep. I stayed still so I wouldn't wake her. For the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel quiet. It felt full. Emma got better, but not in the way people expect. She still had bad days. She still woke up from nightmares sometimes. She still stood at the back door for a long time before locking it, just to be sure. But she stopped pretending everything was fine. She learned to text me when she felt the anxiety creeping in. She learned to tell her boss she couldn't take on extra projects. She learned to say, "I need help," without feeling like she was failing. The sleepwalking didn't disappear completely, but it became rarer, shorter, and less dangerous. Some nights the bell still rang and I would cross the yard to find her standing on the porch in that half-awake state. But now when I said her name, her face would soften faster. Some nights she woke up in the middle of the yard, confused and scared. I would hand her my jacket and say, "It's okay, you didn't go far." One night she stood at the gate between our houses, hand resting on the latch, eyes open but unfocused. She whispered my name like a question. "Nolan?" I stepped closer. "I'm here." Even though she was still asleep, her body relaxed at the sound of my voice. Our relationship grew in quiet ways. I fixed the loose doorknob on her kitchen cabinet. She brought over a pot of soup when I caught a cold. I helped her hang new curtains because she said my house looked a little cold. She helped me pick out a better coffee maker because she was tired of me drinking the cheap stuff. One evening, she stood on my porch holding 2 mugs and asked, "I made extra. Do you want some?" I took the mug. "Yeah, thanks." A year later, Emma moved in with me, not because she needed someone to watch over her. She moved in because she wanted to. She kept her old house as a studio and workspace because she said she still needed to feel like she could stand on her own. I understood. So we left the gate between the 2 houses open during the day. It became less of a boundary and more of a path. There were still nights when she sleepwalked. The first time it happened after she officially moved in, I woke up to find her standing in the doorway of our bedroom, eyes empty, hand pressed against the frame. I sat up slowly and spoke gently. "Emma, you're home. I'm here." She walked toward me without waking. She lay down beside me, still asleep, and her hand searched until it found mine. She whispered my name once, then settled. I held her hand and answered, "I'm right here." She calmed almost immediately. I lay awake for a while after that, thinking about how far we had come. She still had nights when her body went looking for safety in the dark, but now she had somewhere to go, someone to find. One winter evening, snow falling softly outside, Emma came over for dinner. I made chicken soup. It was a little too salty, but she ate 2 bowls anyway. After dinner, she looked at me across the table and said, "Next time, less salt." I nodded. "Next time." Milo finally let me pet him for more than 3 seconds. Emma saw it and smiled. That real, easy smile I had missed for so long. Later that night, she fell asleep on the couch. Not from exhaustion, not from sleepwalking, just regular sleep. Peaceful. Around midnight, she woke up, looked around and asked, "Did I fall asleep?" "Yeah." She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I haven't sleepwalked in almost a month." "I know." She looked at me for a long time, then she said, "Nolan, I like you." I set my book down and moved closer. "I like you too." Her eyes got watery. "I'm not saying it because I'm grateful. I'm not saying it because you helped me. I'm saying it because when I'm with you, I don't have to pretend anymore." I took her hand. "I know. I'm not with you because I want to save anyone. I'm with you because I want to be. Because I like you. Because the days feel less quiet when you're around." That night, Emma didn't go back to her old house. She slept in our bed while I took the couch in the study. The next morning, she stood in the kitchen wearing one of my hoodies, hair messy, holding a cup of coffee. She took a sip and said if she kept coming over this often, she was going to buy me a proper espresso machine. I asked if that meant she planned on coming over a lot. She turned toward me, cheeks pink but eyes steady. "If you want me to." "I do." From then on, the gate between the 2 houses stayed open almost every day. We still had our own spaces, but the distance between them stopped feeling like separation. It felt like connection. Years later, Emma still tells people our love story started the night she sleepwalked into my house. I usually think it started earlier than that, with a loose gate hinge, a box of slightly dry cookies, late-night coffee left on doorsteps. And all the times I saw her lights on too late and didn't know how to ask if she was okay. I never saved Emma. I just opened the door when she got lost in the dark. I just kept saying over and over, "You're home. You're safe. I'm here." And sometimes that's all love really needs to be. Not a grand declaration, not a perfect moment. Just one person walking through the gate between two houses in the middle of the night and finally finding a place